Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering. Here we have Vince on Ice Station Zebra. That is a Tin Fins variant versus Peter on Thassa's Lash. All of those Tin Fins builds, references to C-Lab 2020. We've got a double Lotus Petal into Dark Ritual and Entomb. 2 black floating. Peter got to be careful with his hand there. May give us some insight, but also could help Vince out a bit. We've got Entomb putting Gristlebrand into the bin. And Exhume. And Peter forcing there. Getting the extra mana trade-off. Forcing Vince to spend his mana. We'll see if that ends up being correct, as any future reanimate could just be instant death. Shelldock Isle. And now Paradigm Shift. This is a dangerous situation. So just Force of Will left in the library. Vince can make a pretty reasonable guess as to what might be in Peter's hand. Cabal Therapy for Thassa's Oracle would be where you need to be. Of course, it's possible that the Thassa's Oracle is underneath that Shelldock Isle. Gristlebrand turning sideways, and Peter's going to have to withstand probably 21 cards being drawn here. Another LED. Vince has got to win this turn in all likelihood. Unmask. And what do we see here? A Thought Lash and a Teferi. Looks like the Thassa's Oracle is going to be underneath that Shelldock Isle, immune from discard. Looks like a Narset as well, and perhaps an Ancient Tomb. Just Force of Will there. Shelldock Isle, Legacy MVP here, protecting against what could have been a deluge of discard effects. Realistically, Peter could have ended this turn with literally no cards in hand and no hope of winning, but that is probably not going to be the case. We probably have a Thassa's Oracle underneath the Shelldock Isle. Either that or Peter's just getting information on Vince, because that is... Well, I guess it could also be the... Jace, wielder of mysteries. Vince making his first land drop of the game. Casually after drawing over 21 extra cards. Or drawing 21 extra cards, I should say. Yeah, sometimes you just have your best beaten. Entomb. Oh, maybe not. Let's see. Children. This could let Vince draw a whole lot more cards. Does he have a Tendrils in the deck, or is he just relying on like assembling Merit Lage here? Let's see what he's got. He can afford to crack an LED, perhaps. If he's got a reanimation first. Entomb. Is he running the Unburial Rites? That is a card that I had in my list. Yeah, I didn't follow that. That might have been in Burial Rites. That's how my previous build of this would have functioned. You can entomb from Burial Rites and then flash it back. But I don't think the mana lines up quite right with that. Let me know how, if anybody followed that. But children entered the battlefield, allowed Vince to regain all the life he had lost, and then Gristlebrand drawing more. Already attacked. It's going to need some type of tendrils, I would imagine. Can't really think of another way that he's going to get out of this alive. It's going to need tendrils and the mana to cast it. Right now he's at, it looks like, 3 total mana. Now 4. And another Entomb. Not obvious what you'd even need to entomb for at this point to me. I mean, you've got the children. They sack themselves. They just go back to the bin. So at that point, you're just reanimating. Another Unmask. Doesn't change anything here. Barring a Show and Tell. And now a Thoughtseize, leaving Peter with just an Ancient Tomb. Vampire Hexmage. Already played a land for turn. Oh, Hexmage is actually really interesting as it pertains to the Planeswalker. Will that Hexmage beat the Planeswalker? I think it does. I think if you go to draw a card and then he blows it up with the Hexmage, that static ability will no longer be on board. Part of the reason why they changed his ultimate ability, or part of the reason why his ultimate ability reads the way it does. I suspect at no point did they ever seriously consider it. And there's the Thassa's Oracle. Heartbreaking. So Vince did everything he could do there. Couldn't quite cover all of his bases. If he had the Planeswalker underneath there, that would have been really interesting because he would have been facing the plus Jace or minus whatever it is to mill and then draw. And you win the game. He's got the Labman text on there, which is if you go to draw a card and you can't, you win the game. But Vampire Hexmage could have played D there, removing all of the counters and actually resulting in Peter's death. But it was Thassa's Oracle, which was the hardest thing to interact with there. And despite completely stripping his hand and having some of the bases covered, not enough to stop Peter from getting there with Shelldock Isle of all the Magic cards. Now Vince will have the play. This is kind of a classic recurring matchup in Legacy, the idea of like a Thoughtseize combo deck versus a Force of Will based combo deck. Thassa's Lash, one of the newer entries into the format, catapulting Paradigm Shift and Thought Lash and Shelldock Isle into playable card status. Verdant Catacombs. Gonna fetch for Vince, and he's gonna Thoughtseize. We see triple Impulse and a Thassa's Oracle. Man, I'm not quite sure what that last card is. I'm having a tough time making that out. We see the Lotus Petal and then a card on top of it. But triple Impulse could be anything. though sadly, Peter only has a single basic island along with a Lotus Petal. You really don't want to be using your Lotus Petal to go dig to find another mana source. The mystery card is taken. Not exactly shocking. Impulse is nothing but potential. At this point in Thassa's Oracle, not really amazing. Chalice at 1 coming down. Vince perhaps pausing in the action here. Does he have a crop rotation or something to respond with? I mean, if he had a crop rotation, you got to imagine you play it there to grab a Urborg at the least. I mean, I suppose you could be worried about getting blown out by counter spells, but as a combo deck, I don't know if you really worry about that kind of wasteful counter magic. Vince, however, has already assembled Thespian Stage and Dark Depths along with the 4 mana necessary thanks to that Lotus Petal, so he could be stealing this game very quickly. Peter's perhaps in his final main phase. If he says go, he could be facing down a 20-20 in all likelihood. And yeah, how do you like that? You're facing off against a combo deck with Chalice at 1 on board. They haven't even played a spell. Well, I guess they played the Thoughtseize. But, I mean, that combo just is very, very, very difficult to stop without the proper cards. Obviously, things like Wasteland interact well against it, but you know, if you're sitting there on like a Force of Negation versus many combo decks, you are really in good shape. Versus a deck like this, if they have the Merit Lage part of their combo, it doesn't really interact. It doesn't stop the Vampire Hexmage. Certainly doesn't stop land drops. So Vince striking back quickly there, picking up that game. Peter will have the play. This is mostly beneficial because Vince doesn't have the play. It's not so much that Peter's deck is incredible going first, but I mean, it is definitely better for your opponent to not get out in front. You know, it's the type of matchup where if I was playing against another Force of Will based deck, I would not dread going second at all with this type of deck. You have so many things that can shred that tempo loss. I'm talking about playing Lotus Petals, Soul Lands. Oh, Vince needing to mull. That was probably my only complaint about the Tin Fins deck that I played, which is very similar to this. Is there were times where it felt like the cards weren't even from the same, not even the same game, never mind the same deck. I mean, it was just like you draw, you know, Children of Corliss and, you know, a bunch of stuff that just doesn't do anything on its own. Felt like you had like Yu-Gi-Oh cards mixed in with Pokemon and bicycle playing cards, menu from a McDonald's. I mean, it was just totally disconnected at times, and then other times you just have these perfectly synergistic hands that win on the first turn. But that was certainly a concern when you'd have those hands that just really just didn't function at all, and you had to throw them back. Now, mercifully, you rarely lose games because of that, where you know, there's going to be variance, and that just is what it is. But like the places where you drop games that you could have won tend to be things like tempting hands, where it's just like, this is pretty close. Can I keep this? And then you keep a hand you shouldn't keep, or mulligan a hand that you should. That's where you can lose percentage points relative to other good players. If you gave a great player and an average player the exact same setups and you have them play through, the decisions with those close hands are going to be a determining factor in terms of which player is actually better. But if a hand's just total garbage, it's not really much of a risk. You just kind of accept the fact that you're not going to win with that hand and you move on. Unburial Rites flashback, and it's getting stopped by a Daze. That is a very all-in line. Leaves you feeling pretty bad when you get this big splashy effect denied just because you can't pay that 1 extra mana. It'd be psychologically damaging. I remember back in the day, a player who was fed up with losing to Daze with a Goblin deck had decided that he was going to play a full set of Pyroblast and Red Blast so he could counter the Dazes. Most of you will get that. Just how ridiculous that is. We've got a Intuition setting up, grabbing 3 Thassa's Oracles. I'm not sure what's going to be next here. Oh no, I get a little bit of an intuition that it was going to be a paradigm shift, but not actually accounting for the fact that Intuition was going to put those extra cards into the graveyard. So this is not exactly the length of fuse that you'd hope for. Getting those 2 extra copies of Thassa's Oracle means that this could go really wrong. Peter's trying to thin out the library here, but there's still like 4 more turns, which would leave him dead to Merit Lage, potentially. Doesn't have to get rid of all of them. He just needs to have a lethal Thassa's Oracle trigger, meaning the blue would be 2. Devotion to blue would be the 2 mana symbols. Alright, and here we go. Thassa's Oracle, and that should do it, as there's only 2 cards left. Vince unable to draw the mana to make that a bit closer. And Peter takes it down. What a interesting pair of decks. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.